I know we are already in 3 episodes, but now it truly feels like Jujutsu Kaisen is back. Episode 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 is a wonderful action episode. So I have slept through the hype of this episode, and now that the recency bias is worn off, I would still say that this is an incredible action episode. It's not the absolute peak of Jujutsu Kaisen's action. If we are strictly talking solely about action, the top 5 would be like Sungo Park's episode 24, then comes Nakayama's 19, then Tanaka's 13, Goso's 17, and then this. But hey, at the end of the day, it's still top 5 Jujutsu Kaisen action episode. Of course, overall quality-wise, it would be even higher because of the much improved color design and general art cohesion that we have in this season. But even then, just strictly from the action point, it's still very impressive because the staff list for this episode is still limited compared to Jujutsu Kaisen standards. This is Naoki Miyajima's episode direction debut. And if we're strictly talking about animation prowess, the action sequence was pretty much just animated by 4 main animators. And while we do have big names like Keiichiro Watanabe in here, comparing this to like, again, episode 24 of Jujutsu Kaisen, where we had Yuki Sato, Hironori Tanaka, Sungo Park, Keiichiro Watanabe, Koki Fujimoto, and Tatsuya Yoshihara, you can see where I'm coming from. The Jujutsu Kaisen team going full power for season 2 would be just a sight to behold. Talking about this episode though, as I said before, this episode, it's directed by Naoki Miyajima. Miyajima is a brilliant animator, and you can now add Miyajima into the list of incredible Sakuga animators who are very young but are now debuting as directors. This is a trend that was started off by Go, and Miyajima is part of Team Go. He used to work on pretty much every single one of Go's early projects, and recently he's been shifting more towards the Seshimo line of animators. Let's get right into the episode now. So coming to this opener here, this is again wonderful animation because all the fish is 2D animated. So that's a lot of stuff that you gotta animate. But there's even more impressive 2D fish animation in this episode. Like, what are the odds of that? There's a strong emphasis on the current here, which you can see by the white lines. But Riko is staying still. I feel like it could be a metaphor of she was thrown into the water but unable to go with the flow, in the sense that she was born for a specific purpose, which is to be assimilated with Tengen, but again she's staying still. She's not going with the flow. Again, this is not something I know for sure, but there are a lot of fish metaphors in Jujutsu Kaisen. Coming to this shot, this is so very obviously corrected by Sayaka Koiso. Just really powerful AD work, a good drawing in general, but the compositing also is really good. Love the way Gojo just casually lifts her up here. Just good old vertical lines to show the speed at which she is lifting her up. Then she completely settles down here, but then because of the inertia, everything raises up, like her clothes and her hair, and then that settles down again. That is very good camera quality for 2006. They might have used a professional camera for this, I don't know. Sort of like a live action influence shot. The background artwork is great, but the scene is also animated. You see the leaves moving in the wind there. Again, just consistently very high quality drawings throughout this episode, whether it's just a regular shot like this or a close-up, as expected because Sayaka Koiso is credited as the chief animation director for this. More of that live action influence shot composition that I was talking about. Yeah, the storyboards, the layouts for all these shots are just fantastic, which was something that was thoroughly lacking in season 1. Outside of the action animation, the storyboards were nothing special, and it doesn't need to be. Again, I need to say that it's a show that is not trying to be full Sakuga, not trying to be 100% beautiful all the time, so it does not need to have complex looking storyboards for every single scene, but that's what they're attempting to in season 2, trying to do the same thing that Chainsaw Man did for the entirety of its run. Again, just a really wonderful drawing. I already talked about this drawing in the PV breakdown. Irregular line work in her eyes as well. I don't know what it's supposed to be. Maybe it's a reflection of her own eyelashes. I think that's what it is actually. I mean, you see the smaller lines here, which was probably the reflection of her lower lashes. Coming to this cut, as at the time of recording this, it's not credited to who did this cut, but it's wonderful. I love this. Just wonderful comical animation of the sun rays here as well. It's just comically sharp, with of course the actual opaque rays radiating downwards. And of course the drawing of Gojo is just a very well storyboarded shot again. They jump straight to the camera, and then the camera zooms out to give a fisheye effect. Really nice perspectives on both these drawings. Also just like how wholesome and slice of lifey this is. Of course, the second half of the episode more than makes up for that. The jump cuts here are just really great. Goes from this guy just peeking to just getting kicked in the face. You only see the build up for the kick, and then you cut to the release. And then you just get Gojo comically stomping on them. The passage of time in the jump cut is shown via, again, the background slightly shifting each time. Gojo kicks him in the face, the background shifts, kicks him away, and the background shifts slightly again. And then, yeah, for each jump cut, the background shifts just a little bit. Again, just the shading work and the drawing work on Rico is fantastic. Love the way this is storyboarded again, the zoom out from the airplane with the goofy ass looking dragon with the goofy ass teeth. I'm gonna keep saying that every single time. And that's a huge dragon as well. What is that, a 787? I think that's a 787 or a 777 aircraft. And the dragon is almost as big as that, which is, yeah, that's big. You get Nanami and his partner who's definitely not going to die. And again, because it's an introduction, you just gotta have them look their absolute best when it comes to the drawings, and that's what is being done here. Now we get some absolute comical-ass character acting, and they are really not skimping on the character acting either. There are so many frames of animation, right? I'm skipping singular frames, and yeah, this is animated in twos. So much effort. I don't know about the sea cucumber though. They might be using some kind of auto in-betweening here, because it just looks really, really fluid. And yeah, just continuous awesome-ass character acting in the background. Gojo throws the sea cucumber at her and she just dodges it Matrix style. Of course, she's unable to dodge the shot that actually matters though. She just slips and falls and there's an explosion of water effects there. And just crocodile face Gojo is something I never thought I would see. But hey, this art style is just so flexible that it can allow for anything. The potion here is animated by Sir Sketchy. Yes, that's the name he's going by. When she did fall down here, the next shot you see her, you see a starfish on her hat. And when she goes droopy face, the starfish also goes droopy. And then when her droopy face transforms into happy face, the starfish also gets excited. And now it's brimming with the same positivity as she is. Small details like this is really what gives life to the project. And from now on, we just start to see one of the many amazing executions of Kagenashi style. Kagenashi, for those of you who don't know, it means shadowless. These two drawings, there are no shadow highlights here. It can be used to provide stark contrast to scenes as well. Like this is pure Kagenashi and this is almost full Kagenashi, but you just see the backlighting on these two characters. So their entire body is in the shadow, but just the edge that is being lit up. And just that edge lighting gives the scene so much more dramatic presence. I love the way the leaves look here as well. Also, the starfish is no longer there on her hat. Rip Starfish. Wonderful color design work, really good art direction as well. You see a lot of the color designs of Jujutsu Kaisen being posted on Twitter, and when you compare that to the final execution, you really see how important that is, especially for the other elements as well, like the compositing and the art direction themselves. This is something again that I already knew, that the color design of JJK 2 is just going to be vastly superior because the head color designer Eiko Matsushima worked under Shingo Yamashita for the two openings. She's an amazing color designer and her work is being transformed wonderfully in the final product. Gojo's hand slowly coming in with the hot sauce, and Riko's face here is just, it's the best. Plenty of smear frames here as well. I don't think Dasang is credited for this episode, so I don't think he did this, but when I watched this, I really thought that this was Dasang, considering, you know, his obsession with chibi character acting. Again, just wonderful storyboards here. The way we just go to the sky and then we pass through time using the sky. The compositing and art direction now gives us an evening tone. The portions here is animated by Benjamin Faure, and just from a technical point of view, this might be the second hardest scene to animate in this episode, after, of course, the Keiichiro Watanabe scene. I love the way it just seamlessly shifts to the Kagenashi style. Again, you get to see the faces of light here. This side is lit up just ever so slightly more than this side because of the source of light, in this case being the giant aquarium. The camera movement, the abrupt camera movement sets up the scene for then switching to slow motion so perfectly. This shot, again, just really well drawn. Close-up of eye again. Gorgeous, gorgeous work. And yeah, this must have taken months, maybe? I don't know, man. Just imagine animating different kinds of fish from all different perspectives. And just to finish off the cut, you have to animate a bunch of random people in the crowd moving. Benjamin Faure is a fantastic animator. He was one of the key links of Chainsaw Man's production as well. In fact, the whole Powers segment that he animated for episode 4 has kind of similar vibes to this scene in a sense. The thing with Benjamin is again that his output is incredible. Like even towards the later episodes, he was still dishing out high quality scenes. So just animating this in a traditional sense would be near impossible because of the sheer quantity of 2D objects to animate. What Benjamin is doing here is mixing 3D layout with 2D animation. That way he gets the hardest job out of the way. The most difficult job being getting all of these 2D fishes down with the right perspective on screen. So once the perspective is down with the 3D layouts, he can just finish that in 2D. Of course, saying that he can finish that in 2D is kind of inaccurate because there's just as much work being done by second key animators and Dogo artists combined, which again was the case with Chainsaw Man as well. But in Chainsaw Man, at least for the earlier episodes, you could see that the animators were mostly doing Genga, It's only towards the end that it changed into like almost full layout and minimal Genga. But for Jujutsu Kaisen, just from the very beginning, it's almost like 70% layout and just do like 30% of Genga if possible. And that is with the far simpler character designs. So that should again give you a pretty good idea of just how little the time is that these animators are getting for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. Another good example of this is Dorian making a tweet about the previous episode that he worked on. His work looks really good, but again, it is just raw layout and pretty much unfinished. Reason just being that he was contacted last minute as a fill-in for another animator who was supposed to work there. Stuff like this does not happen when a show has good schedule. Like on the exact opposite end of things, we have Tengoku Daimakyo, where Itsuki Tsuchigami was doing storyboards for episode 2. He just saw that he has more time left, so he decided to also animate a scene. Again, he was not supposed to animate the scene. He just had more free time to give to the project. He just decided to do a cut. Fantastic working conditions results in fantastic work. That's just the way it is. And now it's time for shit to go down. The way it's shown that Gojo is releasing his technique is just done completely using compositing. There's no animator input here for the eye color. And of course, the extremely exaggerated sound effect also helps to show you that, yeah, he's releasing his technique now. And I just love how sudden this is. All the Jujutsu Kaisen stuff just happens so suddenly. Which is to Gojo POV, see him looking at Geto, and then to the sword that's pierced through his goddamn chest. Then we cut to everybody's expressions. Again, wonderfully drawn. Now we get to see the great Toji Fushiguro stalking a child. Kind of weird, man. So far, Toji Fushiguro versus children has been him stalking a child, him abandoning his child, and then him shooting a child in the head. Again, just wonderfully drawn and also awesome compositing effect on his eyes as well. This feels like the same Season 1 compositing that they're using here. And you also get to see 3 different detail levels of that. Kid Gojo's entire face, and then a close-up of the eyes, beautiful, and then we get a super close-up. Kid you not, this is actually more complex to draw than this. Because here, there's so much more work that went into the eyes, right? This light reflection that's drawn by the animator, all the details inside the eye that's also drawn by the animator, compared to this where the animator output is just the outer portion. Everything inside the eyeball itself, the pupil, is just compositing. Scenes here animated by Hayato Kurosaki, another key component of Chainsaw Man. He is a effects animation practitioner. He's good at everything, but he emphasizes on effects animation. And now we get to my main gripe with this episode and the season as a whole, which is the ghosting. I can stand dimming. I don't care if the brightness is reduced. But when you ghost shit, it looks a bit too similar to interpolation. For people who watch my 4K anime's Dumbo video, you know how much I hate interpolation. Even though this is obviously not interpolation, the animator's technique is not being ruined, but it's still really distracting and really painful to see 20% of the animator's work going to waste. This is again on the better side of dimming and ghosting. It's not as bad as, let's say, My Hero Academia, and definitely not as bad as One Punch Man Season 2, but it's still quite bad, especially for the Keiichiro Watanabe scene that's going to come up. And I also do think that he used a regular old katana here, no curse energy, because otherwise Gojo or Geto might have sensed him coming because, you know, cursed weapon. So you set the scene up with a close-up shot and then a wide shot. You expect a cut here, but then you just see Geto's curse just come and chomp him in, which then again comes closer to the camera and then occupies almost the entirety of the screen, or actually occupies the entirety of the screen to then cut to the next scene. Cool storyboarding. And yeah, while you did see Hayato Kurosaki's foreground animation, the effects animation is again where he shines. The blood effects here is just really gorgeous. Love the timing of the explosion also. The way he draws blood as if it's sausages, as if there's more in the blood. Which, yes, there is more in the blood, right? It's not just blood. The effects animation here overall looks very similar to this cut that he did in Chainsaw Man. The shot is again changed compared to the PV, I'm pretty sure. The background was entirely different. I praised the shot's color design in the PV, and I'm going to praise it here again. It's again a very busy scene. You got the super background, which is just the forest, the trees. Then you got the background, which is like the pieces of the curse. Then you get the foreground with Toji, his sword, the curse, everything. Everything is easily visible. The effects animation here is also really unique. It is the same curse effect that we've seen for other curses as well. It's slowly dissipating off of the sword as well. It's cool. Strong emphasis on camera movement again. Love that Gojo's blue here is not even being emphasized by the animation. It's simply the compositing effect, but you do see like a little bit of particle animation, but it's mainly the compositing effect that's doing it. In stark contrast to this scene where it's just entirely the animation that's showing the technique in full force, and Toji from zero motion just turns into lines. The boulder that he's on just blows up into bits, but then Toji's moving so fast that he's not even there anymore, and the rocks are blown along with him. Alright, now we get to Man of the Hour, Kosuke Kato. The stars have just perfectly aligned for Kosuke Kato. The industry being divided such that there's a shortage of animator for each particular project, combined with Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2's animation philosophy providing full creative freedom to the animators, combined with the simplistic character designs which facilitate Canada-style animation. All of this combined just gave Kato the opportunity to make his best work ever, and it's my favorite sequence of this episode, and honestly my favorite sequence of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 as a whole so far. Let's get into the scene breakdown then. This is one of the points that I was talking about, that is complete creative freedom to the animators, and also the simplistic character designs. It allows for stuff like this. This is just absolute raw Kosuke Kato. Of course, the body animation is spectacular, but the background animation is also just extraordinary. The way the trees come in is just so uniquely animated. Like, look at this, right? It's just a shadow-like thing, but when you get closer to it, it forms a complete tree. Again, in the back, right here, it just looks like shadows, and then they form the full tree. This background animation reminds me of Ajin's work from Mob Psycho Season 3. The way the character slowly appears in frame is kind of similar to the way the trees are slowly appearing into frame here. Of course, the timing is entirely different. Ajin focuses on hyperfluid, high drawing count kind of animation, while Kosuke Kato is just low drawings, post to post, heavy emphasis on build up and release. And the light coming in through the canopy animated by Kato just gives the scene that liveliness that it needs. Other than that, just the most exaggerated smear work that you could possibly have in animation. There's absolutely not even the attempt for on-model animation here. Just look at how exaggerated those smears are. So Kannada-style animation is all about chaotically shifting poses. You go from this pose and the next drawing is this pose, which is completely different. He's done an entire flip here, and then the next pose is again him being neutral. But right now he's holding the pose for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 14 drawings. He held the pose for 14 drawings to build up the release, to work as anticipation for Toji's next movement. So that 14 or so frames of build-up is just going to be released in the most chaotic way possible. He just turns into fucking a snake. He turns into Orochimaru from episode 30 of Naruto. Just the rings of effects animation going around him to show like a sonic boom. And of course the chaotic wind effect just used to emphasize on just how fast he's moving. And of course there are after images as well. Toji goes past the screen, but then you see remnants of Toji. That's his, like his shirt, the black color, and that's his pants, the white color. And that goes past his screen again. Now we get to see more continuous, chaotic, awesome animation. Unfortunately, it's ghosted. Some people might call this lazy animation, but it's more innovative and more creative because it's getting across the idea of movement so well. Even when Toji's animated like literal smears. Like that's Toji right there. And you know exactly in which direction and in what way he's moving. That's because Kato understands the idea of representing speed in animation so well, since again, in animation, everything is an illusion. There's no real speed in the way Toji is moving. It's just one drawing switching to the next drawing. Animation is just sequences of drawing made to look like the drawing is moving. And Kato has just got that idea down so well that he's able to pull off shit like this. You've seen Levi go beast mode, but now we get to see Beast Titan go Levi mode. These are of course cuts from the trailer. This scene again reminds me of One Punch Man Season 1, the way Sonic is just darting around the forest. That was a scene animated by Yuki Watanabe. And then we get to this scene, which is just what I think is a direct reference to Hidehiko Sabada's cut from One Punch Man Season 1. This sequence I've already broken down in the PV breakdown. It's just so gorgeous, the way the art direction is keeping up with Kosuke Kato's extremely chaotic animation, along with the superb background animation, the smear frames, and the thick inky lines to represent smears here. He might even be using crayons here. Of course, always accompanied by a great deal of wind effects, just to show how fast Toji's moving again. The way he's drawing anatomy here, just the most classic possible way to draw Kannada style characters. And of course, what would be Kannada style animation without the Kannada poses? Classic pose to pose animation. Like this could fit in with any one of Trigger's shows and it wouldn't feel out of place. Storyboards here again wonderful. Miyajima is doing such an incredible job for their debut. Still accompanied by stellar background animation, of course. I don't think I've ever seen Kosuke Kato do background animation to this extent, because this is just masterful. This is probably the most gorgeous and the most detailed that Gojo's Heist has ever been from an animation point of view, because the animator had to draw everything in here, right? Kato had to draw these individual bubbles in this form and multi-shaded light bubbles inside, then the pupil itself. Yes, this is easily the most detailed that Gojo's eyes have ever been. This drawing just used as build-up, and then the release is just extremely chaotic. I also love that Toji's smiling here because he's figured something out, that even if he attacks Gojo head-on, if Gojo attacks back, he can't kill him. So what he does is force Gojo to go into the defense, because then his cursed weapon can penetrate. Toji is just an extraordinary tactician. It's like Toji is a playable character in a video game, and Gojo is the boss fight, and Toji is like slowly figuring out on how to beat the boss. Love the jagged key lines again, just so cool. More classic Kannada poses. That's just so ridiculous when paused and viewed, but again, animation is not supposed to be paused and viewed. This again, when watched in motion, is made to look like he's just flipping through the air and spinning through the air. Really cool background animation here again, but this is the single best cut that Kato animated for this episode, and it's just because of the incredible background animation combined with the foreshortening. So he's making Toji move through the space by shrinking him through the space that he created, mind you, because this entire thing, everything here is animated by Kato. The effects animation with the wind and the wood planks, animated by Kato. The entire background, animated by Kato. So he has to draw the perspective shifting in the background itself, along with perspective shifting on Toji, along with foreshortening of Toji, because he's moving through the space at a different speed compared to how the background is coming forward. It might be like a little bit complex to understand. What I'm saying here is that the background is moving at a completely different speed compared to Toji here. Toji is getting further, faster than the background can get closer. That's why he has to animate Toji getting smaller in the first place, because otherwise he could just hold Toji in the same size and just bring the background close to him to show that he's going back. And this is the smallest that he gets, but because he hits the ground now, he loses momentum, he loses speed, so he gets close to the camera again, and then blasts through the back again. Just incredible work by Kosuke Kato. He's listed as one of the main animators of the season, so that means we'll get more of Kato's work. That would be incredible. Of course, Kato is one of the animators who you can expect extremely high quality output, because again, he does Kannada style animation, which is not as labor intensive as like full animation. The whole reason Yoshinori Kannada created Kannada style animation in the first place is so that he can make Sakuga animation in a tight schedule. You can see that when Yoshinori Kannada animates in movies and like shows with high tier production values, he does not animate in Kannada style. Miyajima is using camera tracking here in such a unique way. It's as if he's applying the principles of anticipation and animation in camera tracking. So this would be like holding the pose for build up and then the chaotic release. And he does that in the next cut as well. You see how chaotically the camera is shifting? It's very effective, and it further emphasizes just how fast Toji is moving, because before even the camera can catch up, you can already see blurred Toji at the side here. So by the time the camera catches up, Toji's already left. You just see particle animation of the area he used to be in, and then a gust of wind effects that come after he's already left the area, just to emphasize on the speed component that much more. This is how strong Maki is gonna be later into the show, I think. So I'm very excited for when that happens, because Maki is one of my favorite characters. And I know that Gojo also loves Maki. Really cool rotation shot here. I love the visual representation of Gojo keeping track of Toji and his curse, mainly his curse. You see Toji POV right now. Not even Toji POV, it's probably like Toji's shoulder POV, because he's tracking the curse, right? So you just have an amazing amount of background animation to represent that. That is so cool. I did not even catch that in my first view. And Gojo opens his eyes. This is not drawn by the animator again. The details in Gojo's eyes is done by a compositing artist and the coloring artist. The pattern here is similar to the eyes that were drawn by Kosuke Kato, but these are again not drawn by the animator. Next scene, of course, animated by one of the greatest action animators in the industry currently. It is Keiichiro Watanabe. What defines his style is just the fact that it's so unique that from the very first cut that he animates, you can tell that it's him. Keiichiro Watanabe's animation is again a stark contrast to Kosuke Kato's animation in the way that it is all about movement. Movement over everything, and for that movement, he uses a lot of drawings. So here you can already see just how much movement there is. Gojo is literally spinning up this curse orb of blue that he's doing, and that's shown via animation so well. It's as if he's summoning an orchestra himself. Nice ghosted panel, by the way. At first, while he's weaving the curse, you get all these black curse particles, which is what is used to represent cursed energy in this anime. You see a lot of digital effects here as well in the background. Very different to the hollow purple scene from season 1, where the horrible digital effects made the 2D animation look almost bad. Here, the digital effects is just enhancing the 2D animation. Love the hand animation. It is just so sexy. I think that's the right word to use here. The shading is so good. The multi-layer shading on the effects itself, the blue, and the way he's just weaving it, it's gorgeous. It's such a cool idea. Of course, we need to have Watanabe's extremely chaotic camera tracking, and the sheer quantity of effects here is like Nozomu Abe quantity of effects. He uses blue at full power here, so it's attracting all the rubble, and you can just feel the power of the blue, because the rubble, once it gets attracted to it, it's like a strong magnetic power. So the rubble is literally vibrating, as you can see in the last few frames there. So he's just animating the blocks in like a staggered way, up, down, to sell the illusion like it's vibrating. Just absolutely flawless rotation shot that he pretty much does this effortlessly. Just look at how complicated all of these perspectives are. And of course, he's just throwing that curse forward, very similar to how he hits Sukuna with his curse, which was probably also blue now that I think about it. And then we just have, from a technical point, some of the greatest cuts that Watanabe has ever produced, because the background animation here is beyond human. The trees in the background, they're part of the background, it's part of the art direction, but everything else here is animated by Keiichiro Watanabe. The sheer quantity of rubble there, the entire background with the walls and the floor and the houses themselves, and the way the houses go apart when the blue goes through them. Just the sheer quantity of effects here is unprecedented. Just look at this, right? The house explodes, so you got the rubble from the house itself, then the fence. Every individual panel of the fence comes off. And there's of course the effects animation with the blue itself. Just look at this. There's a reason he did not even work in the finale of Chainsaw Man. He did 2 sequences in Chainsaw Man and then just left, because he probably immediately started working on Jujutsu Kaisen. Because he's a practitioner of full animation, as I said, he gives such a high emphasis to the number of drawings themselves. I'm sure that it takes him a ridiculous amount of time to make stuff like this. And he's also the kind of maniac who tries to do as much of the animation he can himself and does not depend upon second K or Doga artists. Because if you look at his Genga here, that is not only some of the most polished Genga I've ever seen, but comparing that to the final product, it's like the Doga artist did not even have to do anything because of just how fully animated the Genga in itself is. I cannot even imagine the amount of time he spent on this. Next cut is also really cool. We now switch to a 3D background and it's a seamless switch. The effects animation, it still gives us the illusion that it's eradicating everything, even though it's not. The 3D background is not changing at all. But because we already saw him animate hand-drawn and just obliterating the hand-drawn houses, we also feel like the rubble is just obliterating everything here as well. The 2D components here are just Gojo here and the rubble here. I saw this cut on its own. It's pretty cool. I love the perspective animation here. Love the way the hands are drawn. The final cut of, again, 2D background animation where the house just gets absolutely obliterated, and then all of the smoke that's been rising up because of all of this destruction just engulfs everything. These scenes, again, animated by Kiro, that is just absolutely classic Keiichiro Watanabe smoke. Just think of the amount of effort that went into the smoke animation itself. So yeah, top tier Keiichiro Watanabe sequence. I still do feel like Keiichiro Watanabe is at his best when he's animating hand-to-hand combat, and that kind of makes sense because he's a Norio school animator. He takes inspiration from Norio Matsumoto, who is like the god of hand-to-hand combat animation, and Keiichiro Watanabe's weightlessness just adds a unique flair to hand-to-hand combat that I really like. Plus, in no way can I say that this is the best Keiichiro Watanabe scene if it does not feature a running scene. Keiichiro Watanabe meme run is pretty iconic, and I really can't wait to see him animate more characters running. The sequences starting from here are animated by Yooto, who's very new to the anime industry. His notable works are all in One Piece, I think. He's another animator who animates in Kannada style, heavy emphasis on pose-to-pose animation. Just look at the snappiness of something as simple as Gojo turning his head and then the camera zooming out. And the first snap has like beautiful eye smears as well, almost like Umakoshi eye-esque. And then we zoom out, and then we quickly zoom out again. And this is the final zoom. Iconic shot already, I would say. When I looked at the layout material for this is some very polished layout work from Yooto. Always great to see new artists who give as much emphasis to character drawing as they do to movement. If Gojo and Toji were just stick figures, there are a lot of animators who could draw like the most outrageous sequences with it. But then you're just being an unnecessary burden on the animation director. Here, Yooto is not doing that. And again, this is just a classic Kannada angle. Toji is doing that classic Kannada pose. And Kannada style animators really are perfect when it comes to drawing scenes that require impact. For example, drawing something like a weapon going through an imaginary barrier. Something like that requires that snappy Kannada timing. Cool impact frames here, and you just see that blade coming through Gojo's infinity technique. The infinity technique here is actually marked through the... I don't know if this is a compositing effect or a mix of compositing and animation, but yes, it does have a layer of compositing here, as you can see. It almost looks like soap bubble texture. Of course, an extraordinary amount of white particle animation coming through the weapon itself, along with white smears, and then just impaling Gojo, again with the snappy timing. Just that snap is just so good. And on stark contrast to that scene, you get this scene, which is eerily realistic. And before Gojo can do the same thing that he did with the regular old katana, that is just put it out and used his curse technique to pretty much seal the wound shut, Toji just fucking rips him in almost half. And I do think that the way the slice is being done is a direct reference to Bleach, not only in terms of the content, but also the animation. Because in Bleach, that scene was animated by Yoshimichi Kameda, who's one of the most iconic and well-known Kannada-style animators that there is. And Yooto is animating this in a very similar way. Love the way the blood gushes out, and love the folds in the clothing as well. The way the cloth itself is being ripped apart along with Gojo's flesh. Very powerful drawings on Toji here. The way the shine effect is given on metallic objects, it's really cool. Very chaotic piece of animation for such a chaotic scene. He just fucking obliterates his leg. Gojo uses blue technique again. He kills a couple of curses, but I mean, Toji's just too fucking fast. Then we see Beyblade Toji kick Gojo down, and he uses a completely different knife now. It looks like a regular old knife. We see him stab Gojo, and then we move to Toji again. We already know where Gojo is. Gojo's all the way back here. So he's just gonna carry Gojo through the scene and then smash him to the ground. Awesome storyboards followed through by incredible animation. And if I'm not mistaken, that is the same weapon storing curse that Geto used in Jujutsu Kaisen 0. Yeah, just extremely solid artwork here again. Gojo looks fucking dead. I can't wait for people to take a screenshot of this and put it beside the Makima dead panel from Chainsaw Man and be like, Mappa really knows how to animate dead people. Love the layouts here again. 2D animated elevator. Didn't know I needed it. Really nice character acting animation on the crying. Also really good shading on her tears here. I wouldn't be surprised if this was entirely animated by Koiso, but definitely at least Koiso corrections here. More cool character acting and Kagenashi animation here. We are the strongest. Toji Fushiguro enters the chat. Again with the fish metaphors and the ocean metaphors. It even carries forward through like a past imagery of her parents dying in a car accident. Even that is underwater. So instead of like overgrown vegetation inside the car, you see coral. Love the perspectives on the fish here as well. The fish just has so much volume here. So difficult to get across in animation. Especially when you're drawing something as unorthodox as a fish. Like when was the last time you saw fish animation? Except, of course, in this episode by Benjamin Faure. More beautiful character acting. All of this was animated by Eri Takuji. Eri Takuji is a genius character acting animator. She animated one of the most impressive and one of the most important scenes in the entirety of Naruto franchise. This scene is my favorite scene from the Naruto vs Sasuke final fight. It's not even the extremely well-made hand-to-hand combat sequences or the bombastic Dragon Ball Z sequence. It's this long-ass cut by Eri Takuji that I like the most about Naruto Shippuden's final fight. And yeah, just Takuji's understanding of natural expressions and natural body motions. What I did think here is that Geto is gonna betray Riko. Because I know Geto is gonna go bad. And Geto's really the kind of guy who would make sacrifices for the greater good. So that's what I thought he was gonna do. He was giving a good closure to her by lying to her, but then he was probably just gonna knock her out and give her to Tengen anyway for assimilation. Something like that is what I thought was gonna happen. But I'm an anime only, and this is the last thing that I fucking expected. He really pulled out a fucking blick. I love to see unorthodox stuff that makes perfect sense in shonen anime like this. In hindsight, it totally makes sense for Toji to be using a gun here. Toji is an incredible tactician. He used a regular old katana to impale Gojo first, but right now, Geto knows that there's a looming threat. He's not gonna let Toji come too close, and Toji can't use cursed tools here either because, again, Geto will sense the cursed energy. The most sensible way that he kills his target from range without using Jujutsu tools is just a regular old fucking gun and shoot her in the head. The craziest thing about this is that he is a man of principle to some extent, because he could have capped Geto first and then easily killed Riko. But I mean, he's already caught them off guard, and his target is Riko anyway. He does not need to kill Geto. Because he does not need to kill Geto, he did not kill him first. The way Eri Takuji draws the change in expression is just so perfect. The production material for this looks really goofy though, because the only thing changing from this drawing to this drawing is this portion of Geto's face. So that's the only portion that Takuji drew for the scene, and it looks cursed, which is like, I guess, in line for Jujutsu Kaisen. Extremely high quality drawing. So much line work here with the hair strands and stuff. And this is not in line with the rest of the show's art style. Just an extremely high level of detail thrown in this particular scene to show just how dead this character is. Toji just walking out of the shadows. I remember watching the PV and saying that Koyasu Sensei's voice does not fit this character design. But now that I watched the show, yeah, Koyasu Sensei's voice is definitely a perfect match for Toji. And I cannot see Toji being voiced by anyone else. I love how well drawn this is. Like the face turn, again, a very strong drawing. A very low line count, but the low amount of line count just accentuates the lines that do exist. So here you really notice the extra lines put on his eyelids and underneath his eyes. And that sells the shocked expression so well. And yeah, the character writing on Toji is just so fantastic. He just can't contain his excitement and happiness that he was able to kill Gojo Satoru. What he says here is, well, he's not saying like, I killed Gojo Satoru. He's saying that the Gojo Satoru was killed by me. Love the lip syncing here as well. It's gonna be so hard for the dub voice actors to find a line that fits to this lip sync. And this is a completely different style of Geto's curse coming out than what we've seen before. We've seen like glass pieces shattering and the curse coming through that. This is like Geto's curses are literally breaking the foundation of reality. The foundation being bricks. So this is like a brick wall that is breaking apart and his curses coming through that. And I'm assuming these two are special grade curses, his strongest curses. The mummy girl and the dragon with the goofy ass teeth. Love the smears here as well. This is extremely powerful animation, by the way. It's really well animated. These smears, by the way, look very Arifumi Imai-esque, but Arifumi Imai was not credited for this episode, so it's definitely not him. The drawing here on Geto is just so good, and just the right amount of movement on the dragon as well. And look at this artwork. This is what was missing from Chainsaw Man. The art style changes completely here. You can feel how angry Geto is from the line art alone. Just the improper, irregular, sketch-based line work, as if his face is containing the anger. It's about to explode out of him. And this is the kind of stuff that can only be done when the animators have full creative freedom to do stuff like this. Which is what was unfortunately lacking in Chainsaw Man because of the quest for uniform character designs. This again very much reminds me of that cut from Shota Gochizuno's Osama ranking episode. And that's the end of the episode. Overall, wonderful episode, the best episode this season so far, and I do think it's the best action episode so far this season. This entire year, honestly, we haven't gotten all that much awesome fight sequences. I expected a lot of Demon Slayer, but you know how that went. Gojo vs Toji is my favorite fight sequence of this year so far, but I'm sure that Geto vs Toji is gonna be even more impressive because, as I said before, this still wasn't the highest priority episode. This is not the best lineup of animators that this team can pull. So really excited for the best to still come. And I think that the next episode, we're going to get a glimpse of that. According to leaks, the next episode is going to be directed by Arifumi Imai. I don't care if the leak is fake, as long as he at least animates. And even if he is directing the episode, I would want him to animate in it anyway. Arifumi Imai is like top 3 action animators of all time. I don't want his talent to be restricted to solely direction. It's the same way I feel about Tatsuya Yoshihara. And yeah, that's about it. The Jujutsu has started to Kaisen. If you like this video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Subscribe and share, spread the love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for the views.